So, I need to know something. How many of you have been in the hospital before? Oh, okay, good. So I need you to remember back, about your time in the hospital, how you were feeling. Maybe, you have been in the hospital a couple times and you're already used to it. But if you have, then I need you to think about the first time that you were there and think, like, if you were nervous or scared or something like that. About how long were your hospital stays? Can I ask? Yeah? 4 hours. 4 hours.
3 days.
3 days. Yes?
2 months.
2 months? So that's what I want to be talking about. Maybe your experience was a lot more different than somebody else's because you're in there for 4 hours, no big deal. You're in there for 2 months. You're away from a lot of people, and that could cause distress, depression, anything like that. So that's why my research question was, how are coping strategies provided to prevent depression, anxiety, and stress among children in long term, meaning like 2 or more weeks, pediatric intensive care unit settings associated with health outcomes. Now, the pediatric intensive care unit, also called the PICU, is for basically any children that are 18 or under that have gone into the hospital and have gone through surgery or something, so they have to have that extra attention. And sometimes they're not there for that long, but other times there was one girl that I knew that was there for about 6 months. Another one, they're there for a really long time. And she was about 14, and there were other kids that were there that were 4 years old and had been in the hospital for or even since birth, and have been there for 2 months. So, there are 150,000 to 250,000 admissions to PICUs every year in the U.S. Now, when I was looking at other journal articles, I found in another study that, like I had asked you, children that had went there, they stayed for a couple hours, maybe a couple days, but once they left, they didn't really remember a lot of it, or they just remembered the nurses, and everything was fine. But that was just for a short-term stay. So I also want to know about the long-term stays and how that affected those kids. So I decided to make a cross-sectional survey. I surveyed the UNC Children's Hospital nurses, also on the floor and the PICU, because it's 2 different areas. And I had 20 nurses. It was an optional survey. It was completely anonymous. So I'm actually going to pass out some of my surveys because I think they were pretty interesting. You can look at some of them. I had 3 pages. The first one was my consent letter, and I asked basically whether they were in the PICU and how long they've been in the hospital and how long they've been in that specific hospital. My second page asked about patients who were in the hospital for less than a week, and there were specific questions on there about the nurse and the patient relationship. So I want to know how well the nurses and the patients got along, so that, this survey is completely optional, so I want to know how reliable this was. Also, the likelihood of psychological effects, how nurses felt that the stays impacted the kids, and if there were any relationship changes between the children and their parents. On the second page, it asked the same questions, but about children who were in the hospital for more than 2 weeks. I also left a space for extra comments, and the ones that I passed out right now were the surveys that people commented more on, and they agreed that the longer that children are in the hospital, the more attached they become to staff, and vice versa. So this is my 2x2 table. I saw the relationship, duration in the hospital with psychological effect or no psychological effect according to the nurses and what they felt. And I found that children who were in the hospital for more than 2 weeks had 2.6 more likely to have psychological effects. So this is just a pie chart showing the answers that I got from the nurses. My strengths were that I had a really helpful mentor. A lot of things changed during the course of this, and she helped a lot. I had good survey questions, I believe, and I was able to get the nurses to take the survey because I can't have just you guys answer this. But my limitations were that they were based on opinion, and they were taken very quickly because the nurses are busy. Also, there's a thing on there. I asked, I didn't leave an option for never because I asked, sometimes, often, or frequently, and I had got one survey back that said an answer choice that said never. So I would definitely change that. So this is some of the things that are already offered in the hospitals. They have PTO, GE, child life, school teachers. I sat down and I talked to one of the head nurses, and she said that there was music there. So I want to be an art therapist, and that's something that could be provided to these kids. And they had a music therapist, which is kind of the same thing, only you help them out with their stress and their time in the hospital, but through music. So I also want increase in awareness to the nurses, because my mentor didn't know about a few of these things. So I was just wondering how many other nurses knew about these solutions. Yeah, these are some of my references. Yeah, and I want to say thank you, Dr. Behrens and Mary, because we helped each other a lot. Yes.
What made you focus on nurses? Because you were researching about children, or the children in the hospital, and like you said, it was mainly opinionated. Did you have the opportunity, did you think you could have the opportunity to work with children, and if so, would you?
I originally wanted to work with children, but then when I actually visited and I went on rounds with my doctor, most of the children were infants or were too young to basically understand, and a lot of them were also on a lot of medication. Some of them weren't even conscious when we walked by, so I wouldn't have even been able to survey them. So I had to go off of what nurses felt, since they do spend most of their time with them. Yes.
My question is was it kind of nerve-wracking to go over there and kind of pass out a survey and ask questions to people you don't necessarily know, and work in a hospital, you feel kind of awkward?
Well, actually, my mentor walked around, and she knows how busy the nurses are, so she walked around, she introduced me, she gave them the survey, told them what it was. We walked away, and we walked around, gave the nurses all these surveys, whoever wanted to take them, and we walked back and we saw who had them, or if they finished them, then they left them in a certain area. And I didn't really was one-on-one with them because my mentor already knew how the nurses were.
And what exactly does PICU mean again?
Pediatric Intensive Care Unit.
What is the PT and the OT? Is that for occupational therapy and physical therapy?
Physical therapy and
I'm not sure if my question or comment, but I thought it was interesting when you said that they become more attached to staff members at the hospital for ones that stay a long time.
Yeah, actually there was this, when I was sitting down with one of the head nurses, they were talking about how the parents of one child would just drop them off at the hospital and be like, here, they want to be here. They become a second family to them, because sometimes, their families can't make it up there all the time. They don't see them all the time, and it's just, that's just their second home.
Yeah, it might be interesting to look at long-term effects for some of those types of kids when they come home. Maybe it's more like depression and more mentally challenging for them to readjust to their life. It's very interesting. Give her a huge round of applause.